No one in that gleaming showroom would have guessed who he really was. He walked in just after opening, a simple Mexican man in worn work boots and a second-hand jacket, eyes full of hope and uncertainty. The salesman barely concealed his smirk. "You can't afford this car." Laughter rippled from the polished displays. His accent was too thick, his clothes too shabby. He turned to leave, humiliated and red-faced. But 10 minutes later, the showroom doors burst open with a flurry of umbrellas and umbrellas and umbrellas. Sorry. With the arrival of the dealership's owner himself. Cameras snapped as the man in work boots stepped forward. He wasn't just another customer. He was the owner's own son, back from college, here to claim the very car they'd ridiculed. In that moment, every mocking whisper froze in the air. And what happened next would change lives, both his and the salesman's, forever. In the pale glow of dawn, Javier Moreno's day began long before most people stirred. He navigated the narrow hallway of his tenement apartment, its walls marked by water stains and faded family photographs, and reached the bathroom mirror, where he paused only to steady his breath. His reflection, framed by exhaustion and resolve, reminded him of the promise he had made to himself and to his family, that one day he would own something that symbolized dignity and possibility. He dressed quickly in trousers worn thin at the knees and a threadbare button-down shirt, tucking it into his belt with practiced movements honed over countless mornings. In the kitchen, he poured reheated coffee from a chipped mug and retrieved a wrapped sandwich from the counter, a simple meal assembled by his mother's hands the night before. The aroma of warm bread offered a fleeting comfort before the weight of the day settled back onto his shoulders. Stepping outside, Javier inhaled the cool morning air, heavy with the distant scent of car exhaust and the faint promise of sunlight. He locked the apartment door behind him and descended the creaking stairs, each step echoing the countless routines that bound him to this life of labor. At the street corner, he waited for the bus that carried him to his first job of the day, cleaning luxury townhouses in the city's wealthiest district. As the bus rumbled past graffiti-stained walls and shuttered storefronts, Javier reflected on the contrast between his world and the world he served. Inside those pristine homes, crystal vases sat atop polished mahogany tables, and potted orchids thrived under sculpted skylights. Each room was a testament to comfort and care, objects and spaces meticulously maintained by someone else's wealth. Javier's hands, calloused from scrubbing floors and wiping windows, moved with precision and respect, even as he worked in silence, mindful of footsteps that might interrupt him and judgments he did not invite. After several houses, his body ached and his feet throbbed inside worn work boots, but his spirit remained unbowed. Every swipe of the rag, every sweep of the broom, brought him closer to a goal that felt at once distant and urgent. He imagined driving a reliable car of his own, one that would ferry him not only to jobs but to new possibilities. Community meetings where he could speak about his aspirations, late-night study sessions in a library that recognized his potential, weekend visits to his sister's school, proud to arrive in something more than the backseat of a friend's running jalopy. This was not a vanity dream. It was the embodiment of respect, the promise that years of sacrifice could yield something tangible and affirming. By midday, Javier paused on a stoop outside yet another marble-floored mansion, wiping sweat from his brow. He opened a small notebook tucked inside his back pocket, its pages filled with detailed calculations of earnings, projected expenses, and savings goals. Each entry was precise, a roadmap out of uncertainty. He noted the current balance in his account, enough for a down payment on a used sedan if he could secure a small loan or barter his time for parts through a mechanic friend. He had researched dealerships for months, memorizing sticker prices and negotiating tactics. Still, the prospect of reconciling his dream with reality seemed vast, like crossing an ocean with only a dinghy. Yet he rode on, undeterred, forging a plan that blended ambition with pragmatism. The afternoon brought him to a bustling dealership on the city's edge where glinting SUVs and sedans stood like trophies under the sun. Javier lingered by the showroom windows during his lunch break, his sandwich half-eaten as he studied the reflections of his own face superimposed on the polished metal curves. He resisted the urge to linger too long. This was not a place for someone like him, he reminded himself, but the heartbeat of longing pulsed too strongly to ignore. He traced the contour of a cherry-red model on display, envisioning that car carrying him home one day, the engine's hum a testament to how far he had come. Evening shadows lengthened as Javier returned to the homes he cleaned, his back bent under the weight of furniture and laundry baskets. He moved with quiet diligence, each task performed as if he were tending his own future. In fleeting moments between rooms, he answered text messages from fellow writers interested in his fledgling tutoring service, offering help with English lessons and basic math problems after hours. He envisioned this side endeavor growing, complementing his savings and expanding his community ties. Each connection, each successful lesson bolstered his confidence that a life beyond cleaning houses was both possible and deserved. Night fell and the bus carried him back through streetlights and storefronts that blinked off one by one. Javier stepped off at his stop and walked the final few blocks home, the sandwich wrapper fluttering in his pocket like a silent witness to his journey. Inside the apartment, his mother greeted him with a tired smile and a gentle reminder to rest. But rest felt like retreat. Instead, Javier unrolled his notebook on the small kitchen table and resumed his calculations by lamplight. As the clock ticked past midnight, he balanced columns of numbers and jotted notes about meeting his friend from the auto shop the next morning. Every line of math, every crossed-out figure was a declaration he belonged in that showroom as much as anyone, that the glow of its lights was rightfully his, and that no one's judgment could extinguish the flame of his aspiration. In the hush of the night, the city outside seemed to pulse with promise, and Javier Moreno resolved that come sunrise, he would move one step closer to turning his dream into reality. In the midday glare, the dealership's glass facade gleamed like a beacon of aspiration and exclusion all at once. Rows of polished vehicles stretched under bright overhead lights, their metallic paint reflecting the showroom's pristine tile floors and spotless walls. Adobe stone pillars framed wide entrances, and glossy brochures lay in neat stacks on glass tables, promising a lifestyle of comfort and success. Javier Moreno paused at the threshold, chest tightening as he surveyed the scene. He could feel the heat of the afternoon sun through the glass doors, mingling with the air-conditioned chill within, a physical reminder of two worlds colliding, one defined by privilege, the other by perseverance. He stepped forward, boots clicking softly on the marble-like floor, each echo marking his advance into unfamiliar territory. The uniforms of sales staff, crisp shirts, and designer slacks stood in contrast to his work-worn trousers and faded button-down. He carried nothing but a small envelope cradling his carefully calculated savings and a notebook filled with months of research. Past the entrance, the scent of new leather seats and fresh plastic mingled with the faint aroma of coffee from a corner kiosk, as if the space had been engineered to appeal to every sense before a single word was spoken. A salesman materialized at his side with the efficiency of someone trained to spot hesitation. He offered a polished hand when Javier extended a greeting, the firm clasp revealing a practiced confidence. Javier returned the gesture politely, though he could feel his own hand trembling ever so slightly. The salesman's eyes flicked downward at Javier's clothing, then up again in a swift judgment that passed like a closed eyelid in an instant. Without words, the newcomer received a silent appraisal, too humble, too uncertain, certainly not the target of high-end sales. Javier cleared his throat and allowed himself a small nod before opening the envelope. He withdrew a printed letter of pre-approval secured by a local credit union and slid it across the glossy countertop. The salesman scanned its contents with a casual precision. His brow pinched as he absorbed the numbers and terms, a silent signal that something in Javier's profile did not compute with his expectations. He laid the paper aside and guided Javier toward a line of older models, vehicles that bore faint scratches or wheels in need of refurbishment. Meanwhile, newer, more vibrant automobiles remained untouched, gleaming with the promise of effortless ownership. As Javier followed with measured steps, other customers drifted by, their conversations hushed but perceptible, glances exchanged in raised eyebrows, the soft click of tongues against teeth, stifled laughter behind polite smiles. In this microcosm of society, the echoes of prejudice played out in everyday gestures rather than grand declarations. Javier felt the weight of every whisper, how it pressed down on his shoulders and made his back arch under the invisible burden of unvoiced assumptions. He lowered his gaze, focusing on the dusty floor panels instead of the mirror-like finishes of the vehicles. He studied each candidate car as if it were a prize waiting to be claimed, running his fingers over chipped paint and inspecting the alignment of door gaps. Every blemish seemed to confirm his outsider status. Each dent, each worn interior seam felt like evidence that he did not belong among the showroom's curated selections. He imagined the conversation in his mind, the precise moment his modest savings fell short of the price tag, the courteous but distant apology that would follow. The humiliation he had endured before rose again, raw and familiar as though it had never faded. When the salesman finally broke the silence, his words were clipped and professional. He spoke of financing shortfalls and minimum down payments, referencing numbers that fell outside Javier's reach, or so the tone implied. There was a firmness in the salesman's stance, a subtle narrowing of the eyes, as though Javier were less a client and more an anomaly in a carefully orchestrated performance. As if on cue, a colleague approached with a clipboard offering a pamphlet on leasing options and service packages, the gesture perfunctory and devoid of genuine engagement. Javier accepted the pamphlet with a nod, the paper fluttering like a white flag. He retraced his steps toward the exit, each footfall heavier than the last. As he turned to leave, he cast one final glance at the showroom's centerpiece display, a crimson sedan perched on a raised platform, spotlighted like a crown jewel. For a fleeting moment, he allowed himself to see beyond the smears of prejudice and envisioned the car beneath his command. His name on the window sticker, the engine's roar echoing down city streets as proof of sweat equity and unwavering resolve. Outside, the afternoon air felt cooler against his flushed cheeks. He paused on the sidewalk, gripping the pamphlet in his hand, its edges crumpled from nervous anticipation. The lettering on the dealership sign caught the sunlight, transforming from a symbol of exclusion into a challenge to overcome. His breath steadied as the sting of rejection gave way to a simmering determination. The humiliation lingered like a shadow at his back, but at its edge lay an ember of purpose. Walking away, Javier drew deep breaths of the open street air, listening to the hum of traffic and distant chatter. He did not look back. The showroom doors closed behind him with a soft whoosh, sealing him out but never the memory. In the quiet of his departure, the outline of his future took shape, powered not by the salesman's dismissal but by the conviction that his worth extended far beyond first impressions. Each step carried him forward, away from the sting of prejudice and toward a promise only he could fulfill. After the sting of rejection, Javier returned to his modest apartment with a fire kindling in his chest. He laid the pamphlet on the scarred kitchen table and stared at its glossy pages as if they held answers beyond mere numbers. The room was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sirens of the city that never truly slept. Every corner of the cramped space reminded him of what he had and what he lacked. A sagging couch, stacks of unpaid bills, a single light bulb dangling from the ceiling. Yet in that simplicity was clarity. He rose before dawn the next morning and opened his well-worn notebook at the place where he had sketched the outline of his plan. With a sharpened pencil, he added a new entry: extra work, tutoring, negotiation. Each item was a rung on the ladder leading him back to the showroom doors. He began by expanding the side business he had launched months earlier. After tagging along with his college-educated friend to a community center, he had started offering evening English lessons to immigrant families struggling with paperwork and job interviews. Those sessions grew into one-on-one tutoring in basic finances and budgeting, skills he had honed while balancing his own modest earnings. He advertised with handwritten flyers at laundromats, grocery stores, and bus stops listing his hours and credentials. Word spread by referral rather than hype. Soon he had 3 regular students who paid him in cash or homemade meals to supplement the coffee and sandwiches he carried. The extra income mattered less than the proof it gave him. He could create opportunities and build trust through service. Simultaneously, he reached out to the mechanic friend he had made while researching dealership structures. Late one evening, he met the mechanic in a dimly lit garage behind an auto parts store. They huddled over a dusty workbench where engine manuals lay open, and the mechanic explained the costs of parts, the strategies dealerships use to mark up accessories, and the possible workarounds that could save Javier thousands of dollars. Javier listened intently, asking questions about financing and warranty negotiations. By the end of the night, he had sketched a timeline for acquiring a reliable used vehicle through a private sale, complete with a list of inspection points and red flags to avoid. Each day was a delicate balance. By morning, he cleaned opulent kitchens and sparkled glass stair railings, wiping away dust that would never settle on his own future home. His back ached from lifting heavy furniture, but he moved with the rhythmic precision of someone determined to earn every cent legitimately. He timed his cleaning routes to pass by the library branch that extended late hours, allowing him to study dealership case studies and consumer advocacy reports well into the night. He collected sample contracts and bookmarked online negotiation forums to learn the language of finance. His hard lessons in humility and perseverance had taught him to value knowledge as much as muscle, and he treated each page of his reading with the same care he had once treated a car manual. On weekends, Javier attended community workshops hosted by a local nonprofit that supported aspiring entrepreneurs. He arrived with business cards printed on plain cardstock, declaring J. Moreno, financial tutor and property upkeep specialist. He listened to guest speakers discuss microloans and credit building, and he scribbled notes on how to present his personal story to potential lenders. One workshop introduced him to a small business mentor who offered to review his savings plan. The mentor pointed out gaps, unexpected expenses that could derail his timeline, and suggested he open a separate account earmarked solely for the car down payment, away from emergency funds. Javier implemented the suggestion immediately, transferring each week's extra earnings into the new account, watching it grow incrementally like a testament to disciplined sacrifice. Night after night, he practiced negotiating scripts in front of a steamy bathroom mirror, imagining the salesman's practiced assurance and rehearsing his own calm confidence. He polished his resume to include both his cleaning business achievements and his tutoring success, formatting it to look like a professional proposal rather than an application. He attended virtual webinars on personal branding, learning how to present himself as a client worth engaging. Although exhaustion tugged at his eyelids, he refused to skip a single session. To him, each lesson learned was a step closer to rewriting the assumptions that had once cost him dignity. Months passed, and the flicker of his apartment lamp became the silent partner to his transformation. He replaced the chipped mug with a stainless steel thermos that kept coffee hot for hours, a small investment that signified his commitment to long-term effort. He upgraded his wardrobe piece by piece, a crisp shirt to replace worn fabric, a pair of sturdy shoes to replace boots that leaked rainwater, a tailored jacket that fit his shoulders without constricting movement. He did not flaunt these improvements but wore them as markers of progress, a reminder that change was possible through intentional, consistent action. Then, one evening after closing the door on a tutoring session, he checked his savings app and saw a milestone he had long envisioned, enough for the down payment he needed. The number glowed on the screen like a promise fulfilled. For a moment, he allowed himself quiet satisfaction before setting the phone aside and returning to his notebook to outline the next phase, selecting the exact model, arranging an appointment at the dealership, and presenting himself as a serious buyer. Unlike the timid man who had first entered those glass doors, he would walk in with documents in hand, a firm handshake, and the confidence of someone who had earned every cent and every word of respect. In the weeks that followed, Javier's routine remained relentless yet purposeful. Each dawn he rose with a single thought: this time would be different. He would not be funneled toward the outdated trade-ins or ignored in favor of more glamorous clients. When he stepped onto the showroom floor again, he would stand secure in the knowledge that he belonged not because of appearances but because of competence, preparation, and unwavering resolve. And in that anticipation lay the true triumph of his journey, the understanding that dignity is not granted by others but built by oneself, one hard-won day at a time. Years passed in a blur of opportunity and ambition, each milestone carving a clearer path toward Javier's dreams. In high school, he no longer slipped into classrooms with furtive glances. Instead, he took his place at the front row of every advanced placement class, notebook open, ready to engage. Teachers who once overlooked him now called upon him for insights on complex problems, and he answered with the quiet confidence that came from years of self-directed study. His reputation grew steadily. He earned top marks in mathematics and economics, received invitations to join academic clubs, and collected awards that filled a small trophy case in his parents' living room. With each accolade, his sense of belonging solidified, and the memory of that first humiliating visit to the dealership transformed from a wound into a catalyst that fueled his progress. Outside school walls, Javier continued nurturing his property management enterprise, expanding beyond the modest beginnings of cleaning services into a small but reputable company that oversaw rental units across the city. He employed several friends and invested in upgrades that increased both tenant satisfaction and property value. Balancing his studies and business required meticulous time management. Mornings began with early classes, afternoons with client consultations, and evenings with community lectures where he shared insights on financial literacy. On weekends, he led workshops for fellow immigrants, teaching budgeting techniques, credit repair strategies, and small business basics. His voice was calm but persuasive, shaped by his own journey from a shy cleaner to an entrepreneur with a vision for community uplift. When college applications came due, Javier approached the process with the same thoroughness he had applied to his savings plan. He researched universities known for strong business and engineering programs, drafted essays that wove together his personal narrative and future ambitions, and secured recommendation letters from teachers and mentors who had witnessed his transformation. Acceptance letters arrived one by one, full scholarships, merit awards, and invitations to honors programs. He chose a university renowned not only for academics but for its supportive network of first-generation students. Arriving on campus felt both exhilarating and daunting, a new chapter that demanded adaptation to rigorous coursework and a diverse social environment. Yet Javier had learned to thrive in uncertainty. He forged connections with professors, joined study groups, and mentored younger students facing challenges similar to those he had once endured. Academia suited him, as did the research labs where he served as a teaching assistant, guiding undergraduates through statistical analyses and data modeling. His evenings were punctuated by positions in the student government where he advocated for resources aimed at low-income students and immigrant families. He spearheaded fundraising campaigns for scholarships and lobbied the administration for extended library hours during exam periods. Through these roles, he learned the intricacies of leadership, negotiation, and policy development, skills that would prove invaluable when he later returned to the dealership showroom, not merely as a client but as a decision-maker at the corporate level. During summer breaks, Javier interned with a financial services firm that specialized in small business lending. There, he applied his first-hand understanding of credit barriers to develop loan products tailored for entrepreneurs with limited collateral. His proposals impressed senior managers, and he was offered a permanent position upon graduation. By that time, his savings account held enough to purchase the car he had once imagined from the showroom floor. Yet he delayed the purchase by a season, choosing instead to use the funds as seed money for a startup incubator he co-founded with classmates. The incubator provided microgrants, co-working space, and mentorship to promising ventures launched by underrepresented founders. The initiative garnered media coverage and philanthropic support, cementing Javier's reputation as both a successful professional and a champion for social mobility. As his final semester approached, Javier reflected on how far he had come, from the boy who silently admired showroom cars to the man orchestrating financial programs that empowered communities. His academic achievements culminated in a Dean's List recognition, and his entrepreneurial efforts earned him a spot on the university's distinguished alumni roster even before graduation. On the day he received his diploma, he walked across the stage in a cap and gown, heart swelling with pride at the sight of family, friends, and mentors applauding from the audience. His parents beamed in the front row, their years of sacrifice validated in that singular moment of triumph. The diploma itself felt heavier than paper. It weighed the significance of every early morning, every late night, every act of perseverance that had led him there. After graduation, Javier took on the role of vice president at the same financial services firm where he interned, overseeing programs that aligned with his vision of inclusive growth. His responsibilities included negotiating partnerships with community colleges, developing financial literacy curricula for high schools, and collaborating with civic leaders to address systemic inequities. He traveled frequently, speaking at conferences about the power of resilience and the importance of equitable access to capital. Yet despite the demands of his career, he never lost sight of his roots. He continued to mentor students, tutor families, and invest in local initiatives. His name became synonymous not only with business success but with social impact. Throughout these years of transformation, Javier kept a leather-bound notebook in his briefcase, a faithful companion from his earliest days of calculation. Its pages bore annotations in 3 languages, Spanish, English, and Spanglish, a testament to the bridges he had built between worlds. When colleagues marveled at his ability to connect with diverse audiences, he would open the notebook, tracing the faded pencil marks that chronicled his first steps toward a car showroom years ago. In those lines lay the impetus for everything that followed, a story of rejection turned into resolve, of prejudice overcome by purpose, and of humble beginnings elevated through unwavering commitment. And as Javier looked ahead to new ventures and greater challenges, he carried with him the understanding that transformation is not a destination but a continual process of growth grounded in the lessons of the past. The showroom lights glowed through the rainy mist of a Thursday morning as Javier Moreno stepped beneath the awning, his polished shoes clicking against the tiled entrance. The gleaming glass doors reflected a man transformed, no longer the uncertain cleaner in worn boots, but a poised executive in a well-tailored suit that hinted at both success and self-respect. As he passed the potted ferns and promotional banners, he carried nothing but a slim leather portfolio, its contents a testament to years of planning and perseverance. Inside the lobby, the air held the faint scent of new upholstery and faint coffee, both reminders of what once felt out of reach. Sales staff in crisp uniforms greeted him with polite nods, unaware that today's visitor was not an ordinary customer. Javier's eyes scanned the polished counters and the rows of vehicles, each one representing an opportunity he had once only dared to imagine. He strode past the models he had once been directed away from, his expression calm and unwavering. The manager, a middle-aged man whose handshake had once felt like a silent barrier, emerged from behind a reception desk. Recognition passed over his face like a flicker of lightning, replaced quickly by a practiced smile. He extended a hand, but Javier's greeting was silent, conveyed through the steady firmness of his posture and the unspoken message that he belonged. At the manager's side, the salesman who had originally dismissed Javier now offered a courteous introduction. His eyes flicked toward Javier's portfolio with something akin to surprise, the guardrails of prejudice yielding to the realization that this was the same man whose ambition had been overlooked. Javier nodded and moved toward a cluster of journalists and staff gathered near a display stage. Bright cameras and microphones hinted at a planned announcement, though few expected who the featured guest would be. The owner of the parent company entered with authoritative confidence, flanked by executives and accompanied by a hush that fell over the room. Javier paused at the edge of the gathering, feeling the swirl of anticipation that rose in the wake of power and privilege. Yet he remained grounded, a figure of quiet resolve against the backdrop of corporate pomp. The owner raised a hand, signaling for attention. He spoke into a microphone, acknowledging a local philanthropist graduate and celebrating community achievements. Javier watched from the periphery as the announcement shifted, and suddenly the owner referred to his own family lineage before introducing his son, Javier Moreno, as the newest partner in the enterprise. Flashbulbs erupted in staccato bursts, illuminating the polished rows of cars. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience as Javier advanced to stand beside his father. The welcome was warm, genuine, a stark contrast to the cold dismissal he had endured years before. In that moment, the air around him vibrated with the collision of past and present. The manager pressed a document into Javier's hand, a contract confirming his role in strategic decision-making for the dealership's expansion plans. He met the manager's gaze, offering a firm handshake that conveyed gratitude as well as expectation. The salesman approached with hesitation etched across his face. Instead of the dismissive tone he had once worn, he offered a tentative apology conveyed through posture and eye contact. Javier accepted the gesture with composed graciousness, his expression serene yet unyielding. No words were exchanged, but the weight of recognition settled over the showroom like a cleansing rain. Employees gathered around as Javier took the stage beside his father. The showroom's lights seemed to intensify, casting a warm glow over the polished vehicles. Javier looked out at the assembled staff, journalists, and executives. In his mind, he replayed the memory of that earlier visit, the dusty boots, the salesman's smirk, the sting of exclusion. He realized that his presence in this room signified more than a personal victory. It symbolized the power of perseverance to overcome systemic bias. He lifted the contract folder and placed it on a glass podium, its contents tangible evidence of a journey that had begun with humble ambition and quiet resolve. The cameras rolled as Javier's father spoke of his son's accomplishments, the property management business that uplifted a community, the financial literacy programs that empowered others, and the unwavering commitment that had earned him the respect of colleagues and competitors alike. Applause filled the space, a collective recognition of transformation and triumph. Javier's smile was steady and genuine, free from triumphalism yet rich with inner strength. He watched the faces of those who had once underestimated him, some bowed heads in contrition, others wearing expressions of admiration. Later, as the crowd dispersed and umbrellas opened under rain-slicked pavement, Javier remained by the showroom doors, gazing out at the street where he had once walked away in defeat. The lights behind him shone brighter now, reflecting off his suit and the polished showroom floor. He felt no bitterness, only a deep sense of fulfillment and purpose. The humiliation he had endured no longer held power over him, instead it had become the catalyst for a lifetime of achievement. He stepped out into the drizzle, the contract folder secured under his arm, ready to drive the very car he had once only dreamed of owning. In the quiet roar of the engine and the gentle hum of the tires against wet asphalt, Javier heard the echo of every step that had led him here, every challenge that had shaped his resolve, and every promise he had kept to himself and to his family. The showroom lights faded behind him as Javier settled into the driver's seat of his new car, the thrill of victory mingling with a sense of serene purpose. He held the steering wheel with deliberate calm, breathing in the faint scent of leather that once symbolized exclusivity and now signified the tangible reward of perseverance. Outside, the rain had stopped and the pavement glistened beneath street lamps, reflecting the city's gentle pulse. Each droplet on the windshield seemed to celebrate his journey from humble beginnings to this moment of quiet triumph. He eased the car into gear and rolled forward, the engine's hum resonating through the cabin like a victory anthem. Yet despite the fanfare earlier, this moment was not about spectacle. It was a private acknowledgement of every early morning and midnight oil he had invested in rewriting his own narrative. As he navigated familiar streets, Javier's mind drifted to the faces he had seen in the dealership that morning, some bowed in regret, others lit with newfound respect. He understood that change rippled outward from personal transformation. His victory was not just ownership of a vehicle, but the proof that hard work, integrity, and unwavering resolve could dismantle preconceptions. Each mile he drove reaffirmed a lesson he intended to carry forward. Dignity is not granted by others but earned through action, and success is most meaningful when it elevates not only oneself but also those who follow. When he reached the community center where he once tutored students by lamplight, Javier parked the car and stepped out into the cool air. Bundled against the lingering chill, he approached the entrance, noting with pride that the center's windows now bore a plaque recognizing his support. He paused before the door, recalling evenings spent solving equations with wide-eyed learners, guiding them toward confidence the same way he had guided himself. Though late in the day, lights still glowed from within, and the hum of activity reminded him that progress is communal. He entered, greeted by friendly nods from staff preparing for an evening workshop on financial literacy, an initiative he had funded and helped design. Without speaking, he surrendered his rain-spattered jacket to a coat rack and slipped into an empty seat at the back of the room. The facilitator offered a welcoming glance, and Javier settled in, content to witness the next generation of hopeful faces engaging with the very lessons that had transformed his life. Later, as the workshop concluded, he moved to the front and gently placed the car's key fob on the facilitator's table, a symbolic gesture signifying not possession but participation. Though no words were exchanged, everyone understood the gift: a mobile classroom on wheels, outfitted with resources for outreach, study materials, and transportation to jobs and interviews. The key fob glinted under fluorescent lights, a testament to his belief that resources should be shared, not hoarded, and that access to opportunity could circulate like currency within a community. He then slipped out quietly, the soft click of the door marking his departure as another chapter in a story that extended far beyond material acquisition. Driving home through winding streets, Javier reflected on the mosaic of his experiences: the cold stone floors of luxury homes, the cramped corners of his apartment, the vibrant energy of university lecture halls, and the polished showroom of his father's dealership. Each environment had taught him something essential: humility in hardship, curiosity in learning, leadership through service, and resilience in the face of doubt. He understood now that triumph was not a climax but an ongoing rhythm, a series of commitments renewed each day through deeds small and large. When he pulled into his own driveway, Javier sat for a moment in silence. The night was still, and the only illumination came from a single street lamp casting a soft halo around his car. He placed his hand flat on the hood, feeling the cool metal beneath his palm. In that quiet exchange, he acknowledged the vessel not just as a machine but as a milestone, a bridge between who he had been and who he aimed to become. He cradled the key fob in his hand and decided to add it to a small keepsake box on a shelf in his home office, alongside his worn notebook and family photos. These objects, curated over years, told a story no words could fully capture, a narrative of transformation born from steadfast conviction. Inside his home, the lights felt warmer than ever before. His mother greeted him at the door, her eyes shining with pride and relief. She reached for his hand in a silent embrace, acknowledging the journey they had taken together. Javier helped her into the living room where a modest dinner waited, candles flickering softly on the table. They ate in companionable silence, the meal seasoned with memories of sacrifice and hope. Afterward, Javier retrieved his keepsake box and shared its contents, the worn notebook whose pages charted every obstacle, the contract confirming his partnership in the dealership, and now the key fob representing both a personal victory and a tool for communal uplift. His mother nodded, her smile conveying gratitude not for the car itself, but for the integrity and purpose that had driven her son to this point. Later that night, Javier returned to his study, closing the door behind him. He placed the keepsake box on his desk and opened it, letting the stories of the past envelop him. He paused over each item, a silent vow forming in his mind, to honor those who had doubted by continuing to serve, to remember that every achievement carried a responsibility, and to live in a way that turned privilege into opportunity for others. He turned off the lamp, leaving the box illuminated by moonlight filtering through the window. As he stood and stretched, he felt a calm certainty settle over him. His journey was far from over, but the foundation he had built was unshakable, a testament to the power of perseverance and the promise that dignity, once claimed, becomes the beacon guiding countless lives.